Everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Jamie University. We are here on Thursday, February 16th, I believe it is. Yes, I always check my watch. One of these times, I'm just going to know the date before we start going. But
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a good bit. I like it.
For Thursday, February 16th. And we're going to be talking the expected hire of Gerad Parker, the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame. We're going to be talking the expected hire of Gino Giudugli, as the quarterback coach from formerly of Cincinnati. He was the offensive coordinator for Cincinnati last year, just moved over to Wisconsin this year to be their quarterback coach. He went with Luke Fickell, and he was going to work under Phil Longo, who also went over to Wisconsin. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the offensive line opening that is currently there for Notre Dame. We're going to talk about some names. We're going to see if Chris Watt, who is the GA, is going to be a good idea. So we'll talk about that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell if you haven't done so already. This is your first time listening to us. And Jamie, let's and if you're on replay, I got to remember that all the people on replay who are not watching this live, thank you also for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. All right, Jamie, I did a show yesterday just before it all became official on the Twitter machine, and everyone got a chance to confirm the news. It hadn't been confirmed when I went live, and it shortly after I went live and the show ended, it was confirmed. So I haven't gotten your thoughts on it. I know you did a lot of good work in Six Thoughts and in the instant reaction. So tell me where your headspace is with the hire and where Notre Dame is going with their offensive coordinator position.
I think it's one of those things where, all you can say about it is that there isn't enough information on Gerad Parker as a play caller to declare anything about him in terms of this is what we're going to see. He's going to be elite. This is going to be this, that. Yeah. Like, we don't know any of that, right? I mentioned Clark Lee because he is a guy that although the circumstances were different, it was the same kind of thing where you were like, he was on the staff for a year. People liked him and certainly thought he was very smart and whatever. But it was definitely, a risk, right?
Never called a defense.
Never ran a defense. And obviously it worked out very well. And that's how good it can work out, right? It's not saying it's going to work out that well for Parker, but it can work out that good.
Yeah.
One thing is too, Parker's a much better recruiter than Clark Lee too. So that could be a very good thing. But we never know. And I think the main thing is how people are feeling about Notre Dame's football program, how they're feeling about the administration specifically, and how this whole thing with Andy Ludwig was handled. That's not Parker's fault.
Right.
That's not Marcus Freeman's fault, right? That's not Gino Giudugli's fault. Like, that's not any of those guys' fault. So you got to give these guys a chance. You got to give them a chance, and let's see what happens. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what happens there. But yeah, in a lot of ways, because it's like the opposite of what we were doing with Ludwig, where we got to go back and watch so many Utah games. Like, I watched Wisconsin games. I watched a couple of Vandy games. Like
Vandy games.
They were bad games, guys. They weren't. They're all right. Whatever. I think their offense was actually okay there. People remember they played whatever, but definitely it's not like the Derek Mason era is not an era I would love to revisit again. So, but there isn't that with Parker. And it's not to say that it didn't work out, as I kind of put in Six Thoughts too. If people only hired the people with the most experience and the best resume, first of all, you and I would not have these jobs.
No,
right now.
No.
Second of all, it just doesn't work like that. That's why you interview people.
Yeah.
That's why you go through the process. And the one thing you say, I don't think anyone should have. I hate the trusted coaches. You got to trust Marcus Freeman. It's like, no, it's okay. You can be like, I want to see what happens first. That's fine. But he has known Parker for many years and worked with him.
Yeah.
So that's what it's not like he just like, it's just so funny that you're like, he really nailed the interview. It's like, that's not why he has decided, like he knew, I think from Jump Street, like as when he hired him as a tight end coach, I think that was specifically, just in my opinion, that was specifically because he knew the possibility of Tommy Reese leaving at that time, right? Yeah. Because it was like, because if we're in a pinch, I feel like Parker could be the guy. And then, you know what? Like he kind of viewed him as that. And that's, I think, where we're heading. And we're going to see how it works out. I think the O-line piece is going to be a big piece of it too. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So a lot of people on the show yesterday were talking about how Parker was terrible and he was just like bad, like he sucks. And I was like, no, you can't say that. You don't know.
You don't know.
I have no idea. Honestly, like you really can't.
Or you can't say he's going to be great either. You can't say.
You can't. The main point of yesterday's show is like the problem with this is you're taking a risk, a huge risk, where you didn't really need to, or going into it, you feel like you don't need to take
didn't plan on taking
right.
a risk.
You didn't plan on right. You didn't plan on it. That was definitely not what Marcus Freeman. He tried not to, actually. He tried to go in the complete opposite direction and hire someone who's been doing it for like 30 years. So that's the point of it. And I think a lot of people are taking the process out on Gerad Parker, which is not fair to Gerad Parker. Since we don't have the evidence for it. And even the West Virginia stuff, like I kind of throw it out. Not his offense, not his team. He's running someone else's offense. Roster was bad. It wasn't a good situation for him. And I don't think like any of the stuff that they were doing, I don't think he's going to be doing at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Matt about this yesterday. Matt thinks it's a lot of the structure that Notre Dame has been using is going to stay. And that's not what West Virginia did. So if that's not what West Virginia is doing, there's really no point in going back and analyzing, what he did or how he handled play calling and situational play calling with that. It was totally different situation. So,
I would almost compare it to like Mike Elston in the back half of 2016. And the defense improved over the course of the back half of that season. I mean, they really had only one way to go from how the season started. So there's that. And then also too, like they played, like he basically played a very conservative style to get, just because of what they had there. And it was like, I don't think that was indicative of what Mike Elston would do really as a defensive coordinator. And I also don't think that like that said anything about why you should hire him or not hire him. Right. And it was just because he just inherited a situation. He just had to step into a situation. It wouldn't be a really fair way to judge him, good or bad. Right. And I think that's the way I kind of see it with Parker at West Virginia. In saying that, I think you are going to be able, based on what Notre Dame has this year, Notre Dame's got a pretty good roster on offense. They got, we don't need to go through it all, but I mean, they've got the two stud tackles. They have a really good backfield. They're loaded at tight end as they always are, right? And his position group, he did a really good job with his position group last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think receiver, the arrow is pointing up. I don't know how good they can be, but the arrow is pointing up there. And quarterback, they're really good. So they should be better on offense. And the way I put it in 6 odds too is that's the highest for Tommy Reese in OF plus, right? The combined FEI and SP plus rankings was 17th for their offense in 2020. And to me, that's kind of like, that's the bar. Like they should be at least like 17th or better kind of thing. Like that's where they should be. And I really think they should be probably, top 15. maybe even borderline top 10 is where they I think they could get to, right? So we'll see.
Just a couple comments here. Patrick Hennessy says nothing wrong with Marcus Freeman hiring people who will be supportive of him and his goals for the program. I think that's a pretty big deal, actually. In terms of he now has, I'm going to use the term alignment. I don't want to, but I am. There is alignment there. I think Gerad Parker is going to. Marcus Freeman believes in him, and he gave him a chance. Gerad Parker is going to work his butt off to prove Marcus Freeman right. He is going to do that. Like that is he is not thinking about going to Miami. He's not thinking about going to the NFL. He's not thinking about going to Alabama. He is thinking about, I need to make this work for the guy who gave me the chance. That's what he's thinking about. The OC and the head coach now have a very good relationship, right? And there's some questions from Westwood Manor Films that we'll get to, because those are good questions. So don't worry, I'm going to get to those later as we kind of get through our initial thoughts here and we go through it. But like, that's a big deal. Like him having that relationship with the offensive coordinator. He has a relationship now with the quarterback coach and Gino Giudugli, who he worked with at Cincinnati. So that there's familiarity there. I think that's a big deal, and I think
it is,
and it matters on the margins, and almost even above the margins, almost a little bit. The problem is that he does. There is you got to be able to call the plays, and you still got to be able to design the offense and have a feel for the game and that sort of thing. And that's the part where it makes you nervous, right? It does. That how is he going to respond in a tight game against Ohio State or Clemson or USC, something like that? You don't know, right? And I was thinking about it too. And Karen, I'm going to say Karen C, because I don't want to even try to butcher your last name, but Parker was never out of the realm of possibility, and Freeman did his due diligence. That's true. And I think a lot of the backlash for Parker, it was almost a PR problem by Notre Dame, and frankly, maybe us a little bit, how dismissive in the beginning we were of his candidacy. Just because we just felt like he's definitely going outside of the program. And to be fair, he did. Like, he really tried to. And as Karen says, Freeman did his due diligence. Maybe he really wanted, like, he really felt like he believed in Gerad Parker, but he did offer the job to at least Ludwig, right? There's some debate about Colin Klein, but that doesn't really matter because it's too far beyond. But we know he offered the job to Ludwig, right? He was going to go outside of the program for someone who was definitely much safer. But he was never out of the realm of possibility. And frankly, Jamie, and I was thinking about this, I think Gerad Parker is the equivalent of Hudson Card if he was going to be the quarterback in the class, right? Like, people would have felt good about Hudson Card before Sam Hartman's name entered the picture. But imagine if Sam Hartman was committed to Notre Dame and then he fell off for some reason, like Notre Dame couldn't get him into school or whatever, right? And then it turned out to be Hudson Card. People would be so down on Hudson Card at that position, right?
Yeah.
And there are some parallels, right? They've both started a little bit.
It is the response to it.
Yeah. They've both started. They've both started some games. Both replaced for they've never had their own team, right? Well, it's like, oh, didn't Hudson Card like lose his job to Quinn Ewers? Like, he was replaced. That he started games and they didn't want him. Like, and so there would be questions there. There would be questions about Hudson Card. How does he react when it's his own team, right? Yeah. And I think those are the questions that we have about Gerad Parker, and it's a little bit unfair to him, just the way that the whole thing happened. It couldn't have been worse for him from a PR perspective. So,
the one thing I will say though, I do think it's okay if you like Notre Dame fans. I always try to be like, don't tell people how to be fans, because even though there are some like wild fans, especially on ISD's board all the time, that I like, really disagree with. I mean, I know all these people just loving this shirt today, so I just wanted to say shout out to that, man. Just
Mike Frank. Mike is in here. He wants us to talk 2024 Quasi Gilmore. We can.
So I just like, it's okay for people to be disappointed because they expected
For sure.
somebody, whatever.
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
fine. You
Absolutely.
should totally, that's totally fine. It's just like, it is like how excited people were when Notre Dame got, it's Matt there, but
Oh, is it Matt?
yeah,
Okay.
but
Oh, Matt
it's
Freeman.
excited about how people were excited about Marcus Freeman and how big a deal that was, right? And that was like a very big deal, right?
Yeah.
When that happened, and that, and we talked about it, how he chose LSU and basically chose Oregon as well, or chose Notre Dame over Oregon as well. So like those are big deals. So I mean, it's just like recruiting. It's like people get more excited about the guy who's the 5-star recruit than the guy with the 3-star with potential, right? Like that's what it is. And I don't blame people for being like disappointed, especially because of the process.
Right.
That's totally fine.
Right.
In saying that, it isn't as simple as, like you said, he doesn't suck. You don't know that he sucks. We don't know anything. And that's the uncertainty. It's just the uncertainty. And that's why
Yeah.
people are, people want certainty, and people want Notre Dame to be good. And then if and that's the thing with the one thing with Andy Ludwig is Notre Dame's offense was going to be good with him for sure.
Yes.
It was definitely going to be good. Could it have been great? I think that was TBD because he never really had a great offense. He had a bunch of good ones.
Yes.
A bunch of good ones.
He definitely never had a great passing game.
Ever. Never had a great passing game. Never had explosive passing game. If you want to win in college football today, so 8 of the last 10 national champions have been top 15 in explosive passing plays, in passing plays of 20 plus yards. They've been top, 8 of 10, 5 of 10, been in the top 3. So it matters. I mean, and the two that weren't were Alabama in 2015 and 2017. And they were Alabama. They were loaded. They had the number 1 defense and DF plus. They were just absolutely loaded to bear. And even Alabama was like, hey, we can't play this way.
Right. They changed.
So if that's the thing, I mean, I do think there is something to, which is why it's a huge risk with Wisconsin going to be like, well, we're going away from our identity and we're going to go air raid now. Mm-hmm. But I respect that they're going to zag and try to go away from where they were before, because I think that, Wisconsin, it was hitting their head against the ceiling. They were never going to run that kind of Paul Chryst offense and get anywhere with it. So they're trying something else, and maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but at least they tried.
Yeah.
And the one thing with Andy Ludwig is, I'm not saying it's not like waving the white flag, but I don't know if there's I mean, he coached 25 years.
Right.
He never really had it. So it's like, the talent is better. So maybe that changes it, but I don't know what the ceiling was.
There was a level of projection with him for sure. There were some things he couldn't just be what he's been. He did need to kind of take the next step as a coordinator. And there are some questions about, he's older, right? So he's been doing it for so long. Like you've had all this time to kind of adjust to what the climate is, and you haven't, right? So there were some open questions there. Yesterday, again on the show, like people were like, you're spinning. It's like, I'm not spinning. I'm looking at the situation, right? Like how I feel about the process is it's just not important anymore, because they're going to hire somebody. So you look at the risks, and I outline the risks, and you look at the positives. It's like, there are some positives, and we should talk about them, right? Now, are those positives enough to outweigh the risks? That's what we're going to find out. But it's like, I'm not spinning. what Notre Dame doesn't talk to me. I don't have a
They don't
relationship
care.
with Notre Dame.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They
They don't care how I feel.
No.
So I'll say what I want. I'm gonna get some questions from Westwood Manor Films. I think they're pretty good questions. The first one is I know there's only so much you guys can say on some storylines, but it's been hinted multiple times that Tommy was not really Freeman's guy. Was the divide between these two bigger than was let on? Why don't you start? I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but why don't you start?
Okay, wait. Say that again. The divide
between. So like the they weren't in alignment.
Yeah.
Let's say that. Like how? Like what? Do you have anything to say about that? I talked about a little bit about it yesterday. I was basically like, Freeman did not hire Reese. He did not go and seek out Tommy Reese for his position. Tommy Reese wanted to interview, or to some extent interviewed for the head coaching job. He didn't get it. So just that fact in itself, like there's going to be a little bit of tension there. Is there anything else that you want to kind of go into?
Well, I think there's a divide there because, he's not his guy, right? They weren't like, and it was like one of these things too. It's like, like when Jack Swarbrick goes to him and be like, okay, I mean, we want to bring you on the job. We'll hire you for the job, but you got to keep Tommy. And this is whatever. It's like, what is he going to say? No? Like, he's going to.
Right. He's got to take it.
So he's got to take it. So the point is you don't know whether or not, whatever. And I don't think they had like this horrible relationship.
I don't think it was like super toxic.
No, it wasn't like a contentious, horrible relationship or whatever. But I think it's pretty obvious. It wasn't like, they weren't like Napoleon Dynamite, grabbing like this and being like, yes, we're together. And they're going to go and they were going to, this is this thing. They were going to build this monster together. No, I mean, Tommy Reese was never down for that. That's just what it was. And so they're on different paths, like Marcus Freeman. And you know what? And fair enough too. So if Tommy Reese just say Tommy Reese got the head job, right? And then Marcus Freeman was like, okay, well, I'm going to try. I mean, Marcus Freeman was trying to get another head coaching job.
Right.
He didn't get right. So, but let's just say he didn't. And then, and said he was like, I'm not going to go to LSU because I already decided I didn't want to go to LSU. So Marcus Freeman says, okay, I'll stay at Notre Dame. You think Marcus Freeman is sticking around for a long term? No.
Right.
No, he's trying to get the next job, right? He's trying to go somewhere else. Maybe he's the DC at Wisconsin now, or so. I don't know, right? Like, or a head coach somewhere else, like that. That's just kind of where it was at. Like, these guys didn't come up together; they're not attached together, and that's not even to say too, like with some of these other guys that Marcus Freeman has a relationship. It makes it harder for some of these guys to leave because they have a relationship with Marcus Freeman. But like, everybody's trying to advance their career. Everybody's trying to do that too. So, I don't think they were like totally in sync and they were going to like work together forever. I think it was inevitable that there was going to be a parting at some point. And I thought my prediction would have been 1 year. Yeah. So I think kind of turned out how it was supposed to turn out.
And like Gerad Parker, that was a Marcus Freeman hire. Right.
Yes.
And so imagine like the situation you just laid out, like Tommy Reese is named head coach. Marcus Freeman stays on DC, and then Tommy hires his own defensive line coach, that Marcus Freeman really isn't really into. Like, that's going to be a problem, right? Like, it's just, there's things like that where it's like, I'm Marcus Freeman is hiring people, and it's like, that you have a disagreement about that. It's like, well, I'm the head coach. Like, that's my job, right? I can do it. And so it's just little things like that. My point is like that you don't have a problem now with Gerad Parker because they're guys, right? That's his guy. And so that tension kind of goes away, right? And everyone's kind of working towards the same thing. Same thing with Gino Giudugli, right? And I think that's a big deal. Another question from Westwood Manor Films: how do we think the quarterback room feels about the hire? I don't know specifically about the quarterback room. I know that Gerad Parker is very well liked on the roster, just generally. I know he has good relationships with them, and I think that the quarterback coach hire is seen in a very positive way by the quarterback room. Do you have any thoughts, Jamie?
No, I mean, I would imagine it would be, right. And I also think too, like, if Sam Hartman is already kind of like going through this, if he, I mean, he's going to let it play out and try like he's in, or else we would have already heard rumblings like he's like looking for the exit. You know what I mean? If that's the case. So I think that's, and the other thing is too, is that like, if you play college football, it's just very rare that you're going to have the same position coach for your entire career. That you aren't going to have to work with different coaches, all the time. You're going to get a new coordinator. You're going to do like, that's just how it is. Like, I mean, and that's not just like at Notre Dame. Like when I play college football, like, I mean, from the time that I left, like I had 4 different defensive line coaches in 5 years, right? Like,
yeah.
That's just how it is. And I don't think it's like, I think there is, I mean, to a certain extent, there's some people that where it's like, if there's a change there, it does kind of, it can matter to people. And yeah, there's the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. I think for the most part, there's people are still in the mode of like, okay, like let's bring on the next coach because that's how it works.
Yeah. All right. Another question from Westwood Manor Films. Do we think that the way this debacle has played out will leave a permanently fractured relationship between Freeman and the university?
I mean, who knows really, right? Like, I think that was like, that's easy speculation for anyone to suggest that, right? That, that's not a good thing. I mean, they basically publicly embarrassed Freeman and the program.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can make amends. But it all depends, right? So it's like, if they say, okay, we're not going to pay this, we're going to do that. It's like, okay, well, like, are you going to hire you're going to spend money to hire a general manager now? You're going to hire more people in scouting. You're going to bring on more analysts. You're going to do some of this too. Like, then if I was Freeman, I'd be like, okay, well, that helps. That's something that can help, heal a fracture, right? So I think, I mean, it's impossible to say if it's permanently fractured, but like, I mean, let's be honest. If something ever happens where Marcus Freeman is doing well and decides to leave to go to another opportunity, people are going to point back to this.
Yeah,
they're definitely going to point back
for sure. We do have to be a little bit careful because we don't know the specifics of exactly how it went and how those conversations were. Like, I don't know. It hasn't, like, I know there was a question about how much the buyout was and whether it was gotten wrong and that sort of thing. But like, we don't know that Notre Dame said flat out, we're not paying. Cause like,
no, we don't know how they conveyed it to Freeman.
And
right?
we don't know how they conveyed it to Ludwig. We don't know, right? Like maybe there was not a dispute, but there was like, wait a minute, like the buyout is different. And it's like, okay, well, we actually have to go like talk to people because this buyout is very extraordinary, right? And everyone agrees with that. Like literally, there's no one who has ever commented on this between the like our guys, Matt and Mike Frank, or like national people. Like everyone agrees, like that's a huge buyout for someone like this, right? So something like that, maybe it's like, hey, we actually have to have some conversations. We need to hold up for a second. And then and then that gives Ludwig time to talk to Winningham, and maybe he just changes his mind.
We do know that they screwed it up.
Well, like, no, we know they screwed it up, but we don't know that they were specifically never willing to pay. We don't know that, right? We can assume it, we can infer it, but we don't specifically know. So my point is like, I don't know how Marcus Freeman totally feels.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know how we don't know what the conversations were like when it was like, okay, why isn't this done yet? We don't know how that went.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. All right. Another question from Westwood Manor Films. Do we have any idea who might be the O-line coach, or will it just be Watt getting moved up? And if that is the case, is there any reason to feel optimistic about that move? So, Jamie, why don't you talk about the O-line situation?
Well, I'm going to, after we do this, I'm working on a list for offensive line candidates. Didn't do anything before because I assumed it was going to be Jim Harding, the Utah offensive line coach. That would look like it was going to be a done deal if Ludwig was the guy. So I think a lot depends, on now that they don't have, they're not bringing in somebody from the outside. So it's not going to be someone like, hey, I'm bringing somebody with you now, right? So now it kind of opens things up, and I would think that I mean I don't know what they would do with Chris Watt. I assume that he would be a long shot for it, just based on um, his experience level. But I mean, I do think that it wasn't just like a thing where Harry Hiestand got forced on Mark Freeman. It's like, nah, everybody knows Harry Hiestand's pretty good. Like he's like a really good offensive line coach. So I think like looking at kind of like the Hiestand tree of like guys that he's who've worked with him and that are working now, that's like a good start. I think they could go big too, right? And now that they don't they don't have anything like Parker's not getting paid what Ludwig was going to get paid. So from that sense, they got a lot more money to play with. I mean, I don't know if they're going to use it or not, but I mean, they could.
Marcus Freeman definitely has the leverage now to be like, hey,
yeah,
guess what? Like, you're going to do this for me.
I mean, they have the leverage to go to basically any O-line coach they want and say, hey, we're going to give you a fat raise. Would you be interested in coming? So they could go big game hunting and try to get somebody. And it's the kind of job too, where I think you walk into a situation where, like obviously Notre Dame recruits well, the reputation they have, the kind of kids that normally Notre Dame attracts, and you're going to coach Joe Alt and Blake Fisher, and you're pretty set up. So I think it's even more so than like we said, like, oh, the offense or the offensive coordinator job is an attractive job. I mean, the offensive line coach is a really attractive job. Like it's probably one of the best position coach jobs in the country. And I think in terms of O-line, I mean, it's definitely top 5. I mean, but I can't think of any way that it wouldn't be top 5. So yeah, you could probably get somebody pretty good if they're interested.
Jim Scales asking some terrific questions, one of which is, would Gerad Parker play Kyle Hamilton on offense? I think if I ever get the chance to talk to Gerad Parker, I think that'll probably be the first question.
Yeah.
Like, if you had Kyle
What if he said who?
And then, well, it's a big problem. And then, I just
go out on Parker.
I just go live and basically eviscerate him for an hour, and it's not a good deal. Patrick Hennessy, let's see. He's got some, I think, some good comments here. Next year possibilities: better staff chemistry, quarterback coaching, O-line play as a consistent unit. And I've spoken with GP, and he assured me Tyree will not run between the tackles on 3rd and 2. I see Gerad Parker.
Well, I mean, I guess we heard it. That's breaking news.
So Patrick talked to
him, got the scoop. I do. Okay. One thing that I think people always wonder about when coaches, in terms of like who plays when and whatever, like, and how, like, who has control of it? This is the position coach, the coordinator. The position coach has, certainly a lot of control, but ultimately, like, in terms of like personnel packages and stuff, it's the OC has the biggest control, right? So if there's somebody that, like, you want to get in the rotation, sometimes it can get vetoed by the OC because it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this instead. So I mean, I don't know that what Parker's going to do in terms of personnel usage, but I imagine it'll be different than Tommy Reese and how he uses everybody. So that's something that could be positive, I think.
I've always wondered that, who is in charge of, because when I was playing, it was my position coach and it was the position coaches. The coordinators did not dictate who was out there at certain times. It's like there was a rotation and the coordinators. But obviously at this level, it could be different, right? And especially like It's been.
I think with defense, it's always kind of different because more people on defense play.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
It's like there's a lot more rotation. I mean, obviously, defensive line. Like it's not like Al Golden's like get the second unit D line out there. Al Washington. Like that's not happening. Like Al Washington's in charge of that, right? But when it's when they're doing a sub package or whatever, right? It's like certain people need to be on the field. And I think, the position coaches have I think probably have a greater influence on defense, but then on offense, just personnel can just based on call, it can change like so quickly. And there's just, it's almost like on defense, there's more like hockey line changes almost like in terms of like, you're going to get like we're going to put in two new safeties are going to play on this series or whatever. Right. Or like, let's get, linebackers is going to be Kaiser and Bauer in this series at linebacker. Right. Like that doesn't really happen on offense, like not to the same extent. They're not like, okay, well, this one is, this is Audric and Mitchell. You're going to be out here as the running back and tight end here. Mayer and whatever. Like it doesn't happen that way. It's much more fluid. So I think because of that, the OC just has like a bigger influence on it.
I was kind of surmising this yesterday. Do you think that there is a chance that there's I don't want to say co-OC because I don't think that'll be it, but just like more collaboration between like Parker and Giudugli, because Giudugli's been a play caller as well. Frankly, has more experience as a play caller than Parker does. And so could you see that? Like, could you see a passing game coordinator role? Could you see a running game coordinator role for Dylan McCullough, who, you could see get a raise? Like, again, the money, right? Like they have to be saving money somewhere.
Yeah.
I think see Dylan McCullough get a role like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think, well, one, too, like, I think money plays a big part in those kind of like those titles for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I think that could easily happen. I would almost expect it to be a little bit more collaborative.
Yeah. I did too. That's why I said it, but that's based on just my opinion. So I wanted to check in with you on that. Do you think that would, with the caveat that like any change could be seen as a good change, right? Do you think that would help the offense just in general? And I think it definitely would help because Gerad Parker is inexperienced, right? And I think any kind of delegation on his end, I think that would be helpful to him. Whereas like, cause not just that, but he has to focus on tight ends too. Right. So it's not like he's with the quarterbacks and that just naturally lends itself to being an offensive coordinator. But do you see that collaboration being like, you know what, like there would be more voices in terms of the game plan and that sort of thing. And then he can focus a little bit more on just like the, his position group, designing the offense and then calling the plays on Saturdays.
I really don't know what the structure he's going to have. I always just thought it was interesting. Like one thing, and I know this is different, obviously, because it's defense, but like Mike Elko, when Mike Elko was at Notre Dame, one of the things that he kind of talked about was how not just help to groom like and like mentor like other position coaches on the staff, but also to help him with the game plan because there's just so much to do. Like he would have like the D-line coach has this, right? And then Clark Lee's got third down and this is what he's overseeing all of it, right. But they're doing a lot of like grunt work for it and knowing this and kind of like mastering it too. And so they have a ton of input into that too. So it got all those coaches more invested, and also helps them for when they hopefully become coordinators one day or whatever too. Right. So, I don't know if that like 100% going to be the case with Parker, but I would imagine that like, one of the things that when he was at, West Virginia, like it's my understanding he was like red zone was his thing, right? Like that's his thing. So, I imagine like, somebody will have red zone. Maybe red zone will still be his thing, but like, I think he's going to do that. And the other thing is too, is like, just whenever you have that, you just get so much more buy-in from everybody on the staff. And it's like, everybody feels a part of like the success, and people also want to grow and they want to go and it's like, Tony Alford, and I'm not saying like, I have no idea what Tony Alford's like involvement in like his stuff at Ohio State or Notre Dame or whatever, but like, he's never advanced past running back coach, right? Mm-hmm. He's always just been running back coach, whatever. Obviously, he's had like the assistant head coach out, but he's never advanced past running back coach in terms of becoming a coordinator, a play caller. They've had like a million different offensive coordinators during his time. He's never gotten that gig or even been like anything close to that, and never got a head coaching job, right? And maybe because he's just destined to be that, but I don't know if like he ever got enough responsibility to help him do that either, right? And I think most coaches just want like they want to be involved and learn more, so that when they get a chance at an opportunity, they can go in and say like, yes, I handled this, I know this, and whatever, and they can come up with a plan rather than just being like, well, why should you be the defensive coordinator? Why should you be the offensive coordinator here? Well, I'm a great tight ends coach. Like, that is not good enough, right? You need to have more, and you need to know structure, and you need to know all these things. And so the more collaborative, I think the better it is for the chemistry of the staff, and also just how better it is for the coaches, and like knowing like, hey, this is helping me, advance my career.
Yeah. Again, like these are all like valid points, right? Like, absolutely. And it just like, but at the same time, the baseline, you got to call good plays, and you got to have good designs and that sort of thing, right?
Call
like,
the good ones.
Like, all this could not matter if it's just like, I don't know what to call on 3rd and 4 in a huge game, right? So that's what we're like. That's the backdrop of all this, right? Where it could all just kind of not work out. But I mean, look, these are all good points. Jid Scales asked, would the new O-line coach let Kyle play O-line? Probably. I mean, who wouldn't? You just got to use the talent the way you can. Patrick Henderson with a good question. Who in the O-line room might benefit most from a new O-line coach?
Well, I don't even know.
Harry hasn't been around long enough.
I don't think he's been around long enough where it's like, man, this guy never got a shot with. Yeah. He never had a chance with as long as Hiestand was there. I don't think there was anything like that going on. I think I maybe not with everybody, but I know that like a lot of the guys were like really like upset that Hiestand's retiring, and like they really like him and they appreciate how much they learned with him, and which is why too, like a lot of those guys were like, I mean, it's normal for guys to be like, oh, they would like Watt to be the guy, right? Or they want somebody who's connected to that. And so that's why too, like automatically, if they hire somebody who is a Hiestand guy, I mean, you're going to get buy-in right away, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Let me see. Michael with a comment here. All these coaches have had day ones leading to some very successful careers, and some not so much. Some things are meant to be and some are not. I wish nothing but success for Parker. Which is essentially to say, like, look, everyone has to have their first time being the guy with your own offense, right? And someone brought up a good point yesterday on the show where it was like, Brian Hartline's never called plays, and if Brian Hartline was named the offensive coordinator, home run. People would have just
said, and it's what because he cut. Why? Because he really good at coaching receivers, and he's a great recruiter.
Right.
That's why. And you know what? Here's the other thing too. So like, and I'm not saying Chris Watt is going to be the next Brian Hartline or anything like that, but literally Brian Hartline went from like being a GA to being like, I think it was Zach Smith, that incident with the numerous incidents with him.
Yeah.
And that was like opened up something on the staff. And they're like, instead of going to whatever, they're like, we're going to hire Brian Hartline. And yeah, he had the history of being a player at Ohio State. So there's that.
I mean,
Chris Watt's got the same thing, but it's just like, but that's, and so that will like win some people over. But it was like, I mean, no one really knew that he was going to be like, now, I mean, not to get all big game boomer or whatever that guy is on Twitter or whatever, but like if you put out a list of top wide receiver coaches,
he's number one.
I mean, he would be at the top of the list, right? And first of all, too, none of these people know who really the top receiver coaches. Don't stop doing these lists, big game boomer or whatever. Like they're dumb.
Jamie ran on big game boomer. That's true. You're not wrong. Definitely not wrong.
Yeah, this guy's the 38th best coach, line coach in America. Yeah, I'm sure you did all the research. Like, give me a break.
That broke down the film, man. The film is.
I mean, obviously, it's there partly just to get troll and get hits or whatever.
Oh, I mean, like engagement.
But some people take it seriously.
Yeah,
and I just like, okay, don't.
Like real accounts, like Notre Dame coaches, they'll like retweet it and stuff. It's like, no, please stop.
Like, look at, I'm in the top 5, big game boomer. So I'm like, no. Just whatever. I just wanted to, because these guys mentioned like Kristofik and Rocco, whatever. Like, I mean, I think Kristofik was probably in line to start with Harry.
If anything, honestly, it hurts them. To be honest, I don't think it's probably a non-factor either way, but if anything, it hurts.
Well, I think Rocco is like, it wasn't like with Jeff Quinn. He was like, he's just where he's at because where he's at. I don't know. I don't think. I mean, it's just the same thing. He's been through a couple different coaches. It's like, I mean, is Toss Baker going to start at tackle now? It's like, well, there's Blake Fisher and Joe Alt. Like, I don't think he's all of a sudden going to become a guard. So, I don't know if there is anybody, right? I think it would be much different if there's. I mean, I could have said when Harry was previously there that I'm like, oh, I think maybe this guy might benefit a little bit from just needing. It's almost like when some people just benefit from a change of scenery or whatever. They just kind of need it, or maybe need a new voice. Yeah, and there's probably some guys back in the time when they were like in their third year of getting yelled at by Harry Hiestand that they probably could have used maybe somebody else coaching them. But I don't think there's anything like that now.
Yeah. Matt wants to talk about Mitchapalooza. That stays underrated point. Thank you, Matt. Yeah. A lot of good possibilities.
I mean, Tyler Buckner should still be the guy. I mean, pretty good, pretty great job in the bowl game in terms of what he was doing with quarterback sneaks and stuff.
Yeah,
really, really good. Actually, great feel for it. So
yeah. So Nicholas Henriksen wants to talk about the look of the offense. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but didn't really go deep into it. Do we think the offense will look much different? Not talking about stats, just overall look and pace.
Don't know. I mean,
I think Matt kind of mentioned it to me yesterday, and we kind of alluded to.
Like, I think they're gonna. Look at the people that that were either going to possibly take the job or fell through or whatever. So look at Colin Klein and look at Andy Ludwig. Look what they did. Look how they used tight ends. Look what they did in the running game. And then look at what you think, him hiring someone that he knows
looking for.
What Marcus Freeman's looking for.
Yeah.
They're not going 5 wide. They're not going 5 wide and going and going to be, chucking the ball around. Like it's going to be the run game leaning into the strengths of their current players. I think like that's what we can probably expect.
Rajon makes a good point. Like Hartman might make it look different in that I think a lot of what we saw last year was kind of team dependent.
Oh yeah. It's going to be different because of Pine is there's limitations with Pine. We've talked about many times. Like, I think too, like one of the things, there's that ND, the advanced stats guys on Twitter and whatever. I admire them for putting together all of their stuff that they do. And I think there is some like really valuable stuff that they put out. But I think they shared something recently about like Tommy Reese called all these runs on 2nd and 10 or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is true. And it's something that we've harped on before. Like, when he should have passed on 2nd and long, he ran more. But I think there is this past season, there's the built-in thing of they can't be in 3rd and long, and they don't trust Drew Pine on 2nd and long. So they need to get it to 3rd and short. And the best way to do that is run duo again or whatever, right? Like, and get like hopefully 4 or 5 yards so they can get to 3rd and 2 or whatever. Like so I think that like, personnel really dictates your play calls a lot of times too. I think with Sam Hartman, the playbook opens up a lot. My guess is they'll throw a lot more on 2nd and 10. And maybe that's some of Parker just, knowing that like, oh, and this is like, the analytics say this is the better play. It might be just because Sam Hartman's a lot better than Drew Pine.
Yeah. And you trust him. You trust him in just a different kind of way. Yeah. Patrick Hennessy asks, what insights might you have into Tosh Baker as a young man, student player? I admire him for sticking around, but I'm surprised he's been so patient. So what have you heard anything about you've talked a lot about his body and just how he looks, and you see him and you think, oh, he's going to be a great, NFL tackle. And then, doesn't get on the field. Like, what do you think? What have you heard, or what do you think is the disconnect there?
Well, one, I think he's like, I do admire his patience too, right? But I think one of the, a lot of the guys too, first of all, offensive line guys, typically the smartest guys on the team. I mean, I say that as a former D lineman, like they're just typically the smartest guys in the team.
There's a lot they have to know.
There's a lot they have to know, football wise. They're, usually guys who are, pretty thoughtful and smart or whatever. Forget about like, them doing cake stands or whatever, because, they'll probably do some of those too, but they are pretty thoughtful and smart. And I think most of the guys who pick Notre Dame as offensive linemen know they value the degree. So that's probably one of the reasons why he stuck around so long. One, I think that he came in as someone first of all, he came in during the 2020 season, so the COVID year. I think that was super hurt. I'd hurt him big time. I think it hurt almost everybody in that class, and that's why it's good that they gave him an extra year, because I mean, they didn't even have a real camp that year, right? Yeah. So they didn't have that, and also remember they missed like weeks at a time too, because there was like an outbreak on the team and whatever. Like it was a very disjointed year. So he basically, his first year was like a non-year, right? So that's part of it. The other part is I think he was a guy who came in who's obviously physically talented guy, but extremely raw, right? Like he was a basketball player, a guy who came in who was still really learning the position, hadn't played it for many years. So that's part of it too. And then Joe Ald and Blake Fisher play in front of him. I think on certainly some other Notre Dame teams might be starting, right? You might be starting right now, right? So I don't know. Like I think he's probably like a guy who as a third tackle is probably pretty decent. I don't know if he's, what's going to happen with him, but like I wouldn't count him out as somebody who stays and ends up starting next year or something. Like that could happen, right? It could happen. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens with him.
I mean, the thing about being a Notre Dame lineman, especially a tackle, is you could be really good and you show up and Joe Alt is here and he's going to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
And you have Blake Fisher here, who is a phenom, and it's like, I'm sitting behind better players, and it's like that happens at a lot of places in a lot of different positions, right? Like at a different spot, like Jameson Williams, he's at Ohio State. He's sitting behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. It's like, I got to go somewhere else and get work. So he goes to Alabama and he's a first
Yeah.
round pick. You know, I'm not saying Tosh Baker's a first round pick, but that's kind of what can happen, right? You load up at a position.
Yeah.
You're behind two guys who are better.
Well, Liam Eichenberg, was a guy who's a very highly ranked guy, ended up being a second round pick, was a very good player for Notre Dame. Didn't start till his third year, right? Didn't start till his third year. And, it's because when he arrived, it was like, well, they had Mike McGlinchey and they had and then there was Hainsey. There's just a lot of competition there.
A lot of competition, yeah.
A lot of competition. And so, I don't know. I mean, I would think this is a pretty big year for Baker in terms of it's either he's going to be oh yeah, he's a guy that they trust that he could step in at any moment and just play, or he's gonna move on and go somewhere else after. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Rajon and Westwood Manor Films are talking about the O-line. The most important position coach on the team is O-line coach. I think that's pretty valid.
For sure.
Yeah, it's pretty valid. And I think to go inexperienced as OC and the O-line coach, that's really kind of reckless. You got to bring in someone who is like a rock, and you need that because you don't have it at the OC. So to go inexperienced at both of those positions, it's just you're really taking a chance, and when you don't need to. That's another part. Joe, 1976 ISD guy here. Keep up the excellent work. Any other possible coaching changes other than possibly Al Golden?
I mean, there could be something there's still the NFL hiring cycle is still going on, so that's something that's happening.
And Dylan McCullough has an NFL background.
He's got an NFL background. That's there's still you see Notre Dame's got an O-line job open. There's still going to be. The carousel's not done yet. Could be something that happens. So I guess technically Golden could still go, but I think the chances of him leaving now are probably slimmer now because, Lou Anarumo is not, he didn't get the Arizona job, right? Yeah. So, I guess he's not going to get an NFL coordinator job now. So would he go back for something else? I don't know. But my guess is Al Golden will be there this year and still be the defense coordinator. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't imagine there'd be more than one guy going at the most or whatever, but we'll see.
Yeah. Evan Olson with a question. I think this will be the last one, and then we'll end it. There's been talk of the NCAA is adding an additional assistant that can't travel for recruiting. What position would you want them to coach with his current coaching lineup?
Oh, wow. That's it's a really good question, Evan. I don't know. Do you have a pick, Greg? And I'm still thinking about mine.
I would want someone to coach the multiple receivers, add a receiver coach. That's what I would want.
Okay. So an inside receivers coach and then an
outside receivers coach. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you could have an inside receivers coach who, and on this one, you could have that person coach up the tight ends too. Because Gerad Parker now, I would really like, and if they're going to add a GA at a tight ends coach would be really good, or an analyst or something, just someone who can assist Gerad Parker in that role. So you could take inside receivers plus tight ends. I think that would be really good. Tight ends in the passing game, I think the tight ends now need a little bit of support given that Gerad Parker is the guy.
I would say I'll probably lean defense, and I would say that so Nicholas Hendrickson mentioned here, if you were gonna do that, maybe you elevate a guy like Max Bulla, who they just brought on as GA to a linebacker coach. Then the defense coordinator is just kind of overseeing everything and still coaching linebackers, but you have that there. So maybe that I do think having another defensive line coach, a guy to coach, one guy coaches DTs, one guy coaches ends. And I know right now, this is how it's kind of always done with teams that have one defensive line coach. They have a GA who coaches one and the other. I mean, they split it up. Maybe they don't do it all the time. Like one guy only coaches DTs and one guy coaches DNs, but they'll split it up like the groups when they're working with them. But yeah, something like that. I think I don't know. I mean, when you put it this way, it would be nice if they added 2 or 3 more.
Yeah. Trader G says, could Notre Dame go after a line coach from Utah? I don't see that happening.
I don't think so. I mean, he also has a crazy buyout.
Yeah.
So
they don't want people to leave. They don't want people to leave.
I mean, whatever. You got to give props to the Utah AD. I mean, but also too, like, you don't give props to those guys' agents who because it's like
right now they're stuck.
Now because you might want to go somewhere else,
right?
And then they literally were like, "Hey, Utah's like, we'll give you this, but they can't go anywhere else." And it's like, the agent needs to be like, no, because that's the one thing that with college football coaching agents, like, they have all the power. That's why people actually know who the heck Jimmy Sexton is. He has that's all he does is negotiate like crazy buyouts and whatever and all this stuff that is in favor of his clients.
Right.
Definitely not the school. So, Utah coaches, I mean, get your agents a check, man.
Get it together.
Yeah.
All right. Matt Freeman says, can you rank Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, and Kyle Hamilton in terms of college impact? First of all, thank you for asking. Second of all, we don't rank the gods. The gods you don't rank them because they're gods.
I mean, I'll rank them: Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, and then Kyle Hamilton.
Okay.
I mean,
we're gonna end the show. We're gonna have it out in the thing.
It's no disrespect to Kyle Hamilton.
Unfortunately,
it's just that I think if Kyle Hamilton, one of the things is I think because he had injuries that so he basically only played 2.5 years. Those guys played more than him. So
that's true.
I think that's why I would do it. I think if he probably had the back half of that year, I think could have made a big difference. And maybe we're putting him up with Taylor. Or maybe I wouldn't put him up. Ed Reed was just so good, man. Oh,
Ed Reed is great. I'm not that you don't rank the gods.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. That's not what we do, Matt. And I don't appreciate it, Matt. Thank you very much. All right,
Zeus seems better than everybody else, but
we're gonna leave it there. Thank you so much. Yeah. See, now look at what I have. Now this is what I have in the chat. Now this is what I have to deal with, Matt. I have to end it, or else I'm gonna just go. Yeah. I'm gonna go crazy on some people. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Look, if we need to go live to later today, tomorrow, whenever. We'll do that. So hit the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If not, we'll talk to you again on Tuesday next week. One more time. Thanks again for everyone tuning in. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.